Hello everyone, it's Carolyn of Greenwood Fiberworks here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about how to spin a yarn using a painted roving that will give you kind of a gradient striped effect that you see here in this cowl. So if you look at the cowl, you'll see that the colors change very subtly one to another. They're not real definite stripes. I don't know if you can pick that up here, but I guess so. You can see here how it's kind of gold and it subtly changes to green and then to blue and then back to green and then gold. And there's a really neat way that we can make a yarn that will have this effect by using a painted roving that's been painted in sections. So let me show you what we're looking for. So right here is some roving, or technically we could call it top, that has been painted in sections or dyed in sections. And so you can see there's a section here of yellow, and then it changes over to a magenta, and then to a type of orchid purple color, and then back to magenta, and then yellow, and then green. So what we're looking for this technique is a roving that is what we technically call space dyed. So it's been dyed in sections and in different spaces. So we're looking for a roving that has these nice sections to give us the effect. So the first thing you want to do, we're going to do a 2-ply yarn today that gives us that effect. The first thing we're going to do is we need to divide our roving in half lengthwise as evenly as possible. So I'm going to kind of use my hands and my eyes at the same time. My hands to feel that I'm getting a section when I split it that is even, and my eyes to kind of help me see that too. But your hands are going to tell a little bit better sometimes than your eyes how even those sections are by feeling it between your fingers. So I'm carefully going to divide my roving as evenly as possible, the whole length of the roving. And just take your time on this. This is a small braid. We call these pigtails. They're about ½ ounce, so this won't take too long. But most of our braids are 4 ounces long, and we dye most of our braids in this manner so that you can do this type of technique. All right, now we have 2 piles of rovings in similar, that should be, well, really quite identical. And what we're going to do now is spin one roving on one bobbin and one roving on another bobbin, and then ply them together. And if everything works out great, those colors should line up. There are a couple little tricks to making sure they line up, and we'll show you that in a moment. But first of all, I'm going to get spinning. And oh, one last tip. Before you spin, you want to mark which end goes on the bobbin first. So I'm going to start with the yellow end here on one bobbin and the yellow end on the other bobbin. Now, it's a good idea to take a little piece of string, or maybe just put a little knot, a loose knot in the end of it, so that you remember which end you started with when you get to your second bobbin, because sometimes I forget too. So now I know the end with the knot is the end that I want to start with. All right, well, I'm going to go spin and I'll meet you back in a moment. All right, here we are back again, and I have spun my 2 bobbins with the colors in the same order, and now I've started to ply. So I'm going to show you what to do. Whoops, there we go. So as you can see, the colors right now are matching up pretty well. We got a little bit of yellow-green going on right here as we're plying, and I'm just going to watch the colors as they come together. Now I hope you can tell, but this is turning much more yellow now. Both strands are doing great. So theoretically, if we had split our roving exactly in half, and if we spun each half exactly with the same grist, these colors of these two bobbins should automatically line up all the way down. So right now, look how nice that yellow is lining up. Both strands of the yellow, you can see, are lining up. The colors are lining up just perfectly. Where we want to watch, though, is where the colors start to change. It's normal for one color to change a little bit more than the other. I don't know if you can see, but the top strand has a little bit more red, a little bit more of that magenta right now. And that's okay. A color changes, it's normal for one to change color just a little bit before the other. And then they usually catch up, but that's what gives that really pretty watercolor look between the colors and gives that beautiful shading into your project. Now you can see that both of my colors are starting to turn magenta together, both strands. So they're looking great. So we're going to just keep plying, and now you can see the magenta strands are coming together really nicely. And soon they'll be turning to purple. Kind of an orchid purple. It's not a real bright purple, but you can see how they just line right up. So in a perfect world, this should just continue like this, just lining up those colors so nice. I'm going to turn up the speed on my wheel so we can get to a spot that maybe isn't lining up so nice, and I'll show you what to do, because occasionally one strand will move way ahead of another strand. It'll just start pushing it down. And when it does that, it can throw off our whole skein from there on down. And that's not our intention, so I will show you what to do to fix that. So here we are, we had some purple, now we're heading back to magenta, and everything's lining up pretty well. I'm going to turn up the wheel a little faster so we can get going. Okay, our magentas are starting to turn towards yellow a little bit here. You see those little bits of yellow as they're starting to turn to yellow. It's really fun to see the colors change. And they're lining up really nicely. I'll turn this down just for a second. All right, well, let me just move this up just a little bit more. Now all of a sudden, do you notice that we had our green move ahead here? So we had yellow, which is great, but we have green now. This green strand moved ahead too far, and from here on out our colors are going to barber pull. Now I don't mind barber pulling, but not in this project. I want to keep the colors together, so I know that this yellow needs to catch up to the green. So what I'm going to do is I stop my wheel, and we can unroll it a little bit to where the yellows were still lining up. So the yellows were lining up pretty well right in here, so I'm just going to take, now the green is what moved ahead faster. So we're going to keep our green yarn. We're going to undo the plies, but we need to break the yellow yarn because it needs to catch up. We need it to be green, so it's matching the greens right here. So to break this yellow yarn, I untwist our spin so that it loosens the fibers, and I just pull that apart so you can see how that looks, just nice and loose. Now I'm going to just kind of pull up our yellow yarn off the bobbin until it starts to turn green, and that's where I'm going to untwist that. So now I've got green on my other yarn. I'm going to get rid of all this extra yellow. Show you. All right, so what we're going to do to attach this is I just make a V here, and then I put the strand right in between the V, and then I let that just roll right up on it as we're plying. And so it catches the yarn right in there. I'm going to turn our speed down low so you can see. And it just catches that ply right in there. That wasn't done as neatly as it could have been, but you get the idea. And now we've got the greens lining up in our plying. So I'll continue plying this, and hopefully our colors will continue to line up, but if they don't perfectly line up, we know that we can stop and break a piece off. There's no harm in that, and it gives us exactly the yarn that we want. And this gives us that 2-color yarn. Well, actually, a gradient yarn with a 2-ply is what I meant to say. There. See how pretty that is? All right, I'm going to stop the turning here so you can see our yarn here. So you can see on the bobbin just how pretty those colors are, and then when we knit with it or weave with it or crochet or whatever we like to do with our yarn, it will give us a slight gradient effect as it changes from one color to the next. So this is just one way of getting a type of gradient yarn out of a space dyed roving. Enjoy!